They never expected you to awaken. They believed you'd remain stuck, mute, spiritually paralyzed, trapped under their control. But they were wrong. God has been watching every single detail. Not one deception, not one act of manipulation, not a single moment of calculated cruelty escaped his gaze. The narcissist might have evaded justice in the eyes of people, but in the courts of heaven, nothing goes unnoticed. And now God declares it's time to take action, something sacred, something final, something that ends the torment forever, because the narcissist will never harm you again, not after this. This isn't just a message, it's a divine appointment, a sacred whisper aimed straight at the hearts of those who cried in secrecy, who prayed with trembling voices, "Why won't they stop hurting me?" This is for you. And you need to hear it now, before you consider letting them back into your life one more time. God witnessed everything, even when nobody else did. There's a kind of suffering that often slips through the cracks of human sympathy. It doesn't come with visible bruises, it doesn't earn likes or shares on social media, it doesn't send you to the emergency room. This pain is internal, hidden, spiritual, and for many it came cloaked in a relationship that should have been protective, perhaps even sacred, but it wasn't. Instead, it became the place where your spirit silently bled in darkness, while the world continued to admire the very person draining the life from you. It's a cruel twist, isn't it? That the one who wounded you most deeply was also the one who wore the most convincing mask. They quoted scripture. They showed up at church. They smiled politely in public. They prayed over meals, but behind closed doors, when no one else was watching, their words became daggers, their silence a weapon, their charm a lie that constricted your spirit daily, like a python wrapping itself around your identity. And the most devastating part? No one believed you. You tried once or twice to speak out. You reached out to a friend, a sibling, maybe even a pastor. But the responses were all too familiar. Are you sure? Maybe you're just too emotional. They seem like such a nice person. They've never been anything but kind to me. And in that moment, a deeper kind of pain took root. The agony of invisibility. The heartbreak of being dismissed. You weren't just hurt, you were erased. Your pain wasn't only minimized, it was invalidated. So you stopped speaking, you started doubting your own reality, your own memories, your own worth. You trained yourself to smile when your soul was shattered. You maintained peace outwardly while internal chaos ruled. But hear this deeply. God saw it all. He witnessed how they twisted your words to make you question your sanity. He saw how they used occasional affection as bait to keep you hooked, even as they chipped away at your confidence. He was there the night you cried on the bathroom floor, whispering prayers you weren't even sure reached heaven. He saw how they weaponized your faith, not to lead you to God, but to keep you obedient to them. Yes, beloved, God saw every bit of it. Every dishonest word, every manipulative silence, every performance they gave to maintain their image. He saw every time they made you believe that you were the one in the wrong, that you were the one who needed to repent, when in truth, it was they who desecrated what was holy. Your trust, your body, your heart, your spirit. Let this truth settle into your bones. You were never abandoned, not for a single moment. When you sat in your car, staring blankly out the windshield, wondering how you'd become a shell of who you once were, he was with you. When you lay in bed next to a body with no soul, no warmth, no comfort, he was there. When you tried to lift your voice in church but couldn't because confusion and grief had crushed your spirit, he hadn't left you. God wasn't distant in your pain. He was collecting every tear. He wasn't quiet, because he didn't care. He was gathering evidence. He wasn't still because he didn't notice. He was preparing justice, because the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the same God who thunders with righteousness, is still a God of justice. And when the cries of his children rise before him, he doesn't merely send comfort, he unleashes judgment. The narcissist didn't just cause emotional harm, they defiled something sacred. They violated what belonged to God. And when someone desecrates what is his, when they touch the soul he formed, they don't just provoke you, they provoke him. So while you were blaming yourself, doubting your instincts, begging for one more sign of tenderness, God was already at work. He was aligning divine timing. He was preparing this moment, this very one, where he speaks clearly to your heart and says, I saw everything, I heard what they said, I watched what they did, and now I am lifting you out, I am silencing their influence, I am restoring everything they tried to destroy. You are not ruined, you are mine. Receive this with every fiber of your being. You were never too emotional. You were never overreacting. You weren't imagining things. You were targeted. You were spiritually and emotionally attacked, and now God has spoken a final word. The battle is over. Their time of power over you has come to an end. Their spiritual influence has been revoked. Their mask has been tested against heaven's scales and found lacking. And you, beloved child, are being led out, not with shame, but with honor, with peace, with a divine covering that no manipulator will ever pierce again. So today, don't just feel relief. Feel vindication, feel seen. The God who seems silent in your pain is now roaring like a lion, and the same voice that brought life to the dead is now breathing into your soul. I saw what they did, and I will not allow it again. It's time. Time to obey the voice of God, not out of fear, but out of holy reverence and fierce love for your soul. There comes a time in your life when God stops gently prompting and begins firmly directing, not to harm you, but to rescue you. That time isn't someday in the future, it's now, and it has your name written all over it. God has been patient. He has waited through your doubts, your fears, your rationalizations, your hopes that they might finally change. He's seen you crying yourself to sleep next to someone who worships themselves in public but wounds you in private. And now he's standing before you, not whispering, but commanding. It's time, move. This isn't just a call to action, it's a call to deliverance. Not just a step away from pain, but a step towards something holy. A step into the life God always intended for you. You've been walking on eggshells for too long, modifying your behavior, your beliefs, even your identity, just to survive the cage they built around your worth. But cages, no matter how spiritual they look, are still cages, and God will not sit back while you decorate your prison with scripture verses, hoping that enduring abuse will somehow become a testimony. What you've endured is not love. It is spiritual erosion, and God will not let it go on. He has waited long enough. He has allowed ample warning. Enough second chances, enough red flags for you to see what's really happening. And now, just as he did with Abraham, with Moses, with every weary soul who reached the end of their suffering, he says, leave what's familiar, step into the unknown, follow me. Even if you can't see the full picture, even if the next step is still blurry, know this: your freedom doesn't depend on the narcissist changing. Your freedom depends on your obedience. And yes, Obedience is frightening, especially when you've been conditioned to doubt yourself. It might feel like betrayal, like giving up on someone you once believed was your destiny. But listen closely. God will never instruct you to remain in what He never designed. He will never call you to honor someone who consistently dishonors Him. He will not stamp His approval on your trauma and call it purpose. He will call you out. And if you wait too long, you risk mistaking spiritual bondage for divine will. You risk calling warfare faithfulness. But God is not asking you to merely walk away from something. He is calling you into something, into healing, into stillness, into a life where you no longer have to explain yourself, defend your heart, or trade your peace for someone else's ego. No, it won't be painless. You may grieve, you may feel the ache of what you thought was love, but God doesn't pull you out just to leave you empty. He leads you into something sacred, into wholeness, into a peace that the narcissist can never counterfeit or destroy. You don't need one more excuse, one more betrayal, one more heartbreak to finally believe that it was abuse. You've already seen enough. You've already felt their cold manipulation, and God has issued His verdict. Move now. Stop second-guessing yourself. Stop waiting for another sign. Stop wondering if you're the problem. The voice that brings guilt, confusion, and fear is not the voice of God. Because when God speaks, even if it cuts deep, His voice carries peace. And that peace? It's here now, it's yours. It comes with fire, but it also comes with freedom. It doesn't pull you into submission under someone else's control. It calls you into alignment with His truth. And now you have a choice to make. A decision that may feel like the end of the life you once knew, but will birth your soul into resurrection. Will you keep waiting for the next apology that doesn't hold weight? Or will you finally believe that God is wiser, stronger, and more faithful than the story you've been desperately trying to finish with someone He never sent? The Lord is not indifferent about your pain. He is not sitting idly while you're spiritually tormented. He is not looking at your dismantled soul thinking, maybe this will eventually work out. He is saying, I have more for you, but you must come out in order to receive it. You can't carry the chains of that relationship and still walk in the authority He has prepared for you. You can't keep nourishing what God has already starved. You can't serve two masters. And in this situation, the second master isn't just a person. It's a spirit operating through that person. And God is ready to break its hold right now. If something deep inside you is stirring as you read this, don't brush it off. Let all of heaven and all of hell know that you heard the call and you're responding. Say it aloud, write it down, declare it boldly. I'm stepping out. Let that be your turning point, your defiant stand in the sand. Your obedience is not merely a moment, it is a spiritual uprising against every demonic voice that tried to keep you small, silent, and stuck. And when you step forward in obedience, God's divine protection begins to surround you. There is a kind of shelter this world cannot replicate. No locked doors, no court orders, no physical distance can offer what the supernatural covering of God does when you follow His voice. That covering, holy, invisible, consuming, does not come into effect when you simply wish for it. It ignites the moment you obey, the moment you take the hard but holy step to leave behind the one who repeatedly broke your spirit. You don't walk out alone. You walk into a new kind of protection. It is divine covering, the same type that enclosed Daniel in the lion's den, the same shelter that protected the Israelites when death passed over their doorposts, the same presence that walked with Jesus into the wilderness where he was tempted but never abandoned. And that same covering is not reserved for the flawless or fearless. It's for the obedient, for those who whisper, "Yes, Lord," even when their hands shake, their heart aches, and their world feels like it's collapsed. God does not wait for your courage before he covers you. He responds to your surrender. Many believe that God's protection will stop the narcissist from calling, manipulating, or attempting to come back into your life. But his protection is more profound than that. It doesn't always silence the enemy's actions. It removes their power over you. It's the kind of defense that guards your mind when they attempt to gaslight you, and suddenly their lies no longer stick. It's the kind that protects your emotions when they try to provoke you, and you respond with peace instead of panic. It's the divine strength that keeps your spirit steady, even when the world around you sways. They might still speak, but their words no longer penetrate. They may still plot, but their strategies fall flat. Because God has not only stepped in around you, he has stepped within you and taken dominion over your soul. For years, you may have prayed for this very protection, even while staying in the fire. You asked God to rescue you, but continued to return to the one holding the match. You begged for safety, but kept granting access to the very person violating your peace. Now God is revealing something crucial. Protection often requires repositioning. You must remove yourself from the line of fire in order to come under the shelter of his wings. He cannot build a barrier of protection around you if you keep unlocking the gates. He cannot silence the enemy if you keep giving them your attention. He cannot guard your heart if you continue placing it into the hands of someone who tramples it. So he calls you, not only out of harm's reach, but into his refuge. God's protection isn't always dramatic. It doesn't always come with thunder or parted seas. Sometimes it's the sudden strength to say no when you used to say yes. Sometimes it's the peace that descends in the middle of a conversation that used to leave you wrecked. Sometimes it's the discernment that rises up before the manipulation even begins. And sometimes it's simply this, the sacred awareness that you are no longer spiritually exposed. You are no longer unguarded. You are no longer theirs. You are his. What you once fought for alone, he now defends. What once triggered anxiety now moves past you like a breeze, noticed but no longer feared. Because when you obey God, he doesn't merely approve of your decision. He surrounds it with his presence. He walks ahead of you into every room. He whispers truth into your soul when doubt tries to creep back in. He seals the doors when the enemy returns knocking. And when that familiar voice tries to lure you back, something miraculous will happen. You no longer respond the same way. The old bait doesn't work. The old fear doesn't shake you. The old longing no longer outweighs the new peace. That is the supernatural reality of walking in alignment with God. His protection isn't passive. It's living, active, and deeply intimate. It doesn't just shield your outer life, it transforms your inner world. Because that's where the narcissist inflicted the most damage, not on your schedule or social life, but on your identity, your clarity, your confidence. They didn't just disrupt your day, they violated the sacred spaces of your soul, attempting to rewrite who you were. But now, the same God who once declared, "Let there be light," is speaking again, and he's saying, "Let there be protection. Let there be healing. Let there be peace. Let there be no more access for the enemy to what belongs to me." When you walked away in obedience, you stepped into that decree. You are not abandoned, you are not weak, you are not wandering aimlessly, you are entering a fortress, and this fortress is not built of stone, but with the very words of God, words that say, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper," words that promise, "I will go before you and be your rear guard," words that proclaim, "Though 1,000 fall at your side, it shall not come near you." You are not merely leaving a relationship, you are entering a divine realm, where God Himself becomes your shield, your defender, your covering. Let that truth settle into your spirit right now. God is not only protecting your future, He's redeeming your past. Every silent moment, every insult you swallowed, every lie that twisted your sense of self, He is reversing it all under His protection. He is reclaiming the parts of you that you thought were lost forever, and He is fortifying something inside of you that no narcissist will ever touch again. So the next time darkness comes looking, it won't find an open door, it will find a temple, sealed in glory, surrounded by the presence of God. Because here's the truth the narcissist never expected: your obedience to God. For years they built their empire around your silence, your confusion, your fear of being misunderstood. They relied on your kindness, your loyalty, your belief that maybe this time would be different. They were confident you would stay, that you'd explain, endure, justify, rationalize, and maybe even blame yourself. But everything began to crumble the moment you made a spiritual decision not to fight them, but to follow Him. What terrifies the spirit behind the narcissist isn't your anger, it's your alignment, not your shouting, but your stillness in God's presence, not your confrontation, but your quiet, firm obedience. Because when you walk in God's direction, you step out of their domain. You escape the trap of emotional chaos they've mastered. You drop the role they cast you in, the one where you're always wrong, always apologizing, always responsible for their behavior, and you rise into your rightful place, not as their victim, but as a child of divine authority. And that, to them, is the greatest threat. Not because they love you, but because they've lost the grip they once had. Control is everything to a narcissist. It is their identity, their oxygen. They study your habits. They predict your patterns. They know how to bait you, how to guilt you, how to twist truth just enough to leave you questioning your discernment. And yet all of it falls apart the moment you choose what they never expected: obedience. Because when you stop reacting and start responding to God, their power shatters. Your spirit-led silence speaks louder than 1,000 debates. Your boundaries, established by God, wound their ego more than your words ever could. Because in those acts, you declare the one thing they never thought they'd hear. You're not in control anymore. You are not my God. And in saying that, the entire structure they built around you, control, confusion, guilt, chaos, begins to crumble. What they once used as tools, your compassion, your kindness, your faith, are no longer weapons in their hands. They are now instruments of warfare in God's, turned back against the very spirit that tried to use them for destruction. What begins to unfold next is a process of spiritual and psychological breakdown. The narcissist may seem composed on the outside, but internally they are unraveling. The loss of control destabilizes them. Their obsession with dominance doesn't vanish, it escalates. They may reach out more, they may lash out louder, they may send drawn-out messages, make unannounced visits, spin false stories, or manipulate others to rewrite the narrative, painting themselves as the one wounded. But hear this clearly. These reactions are not signs of strength, they are evidence of collapse. It's not that they're gaining control, it's that they're scrambling to hold on to a power that no longer belongs to them. There is a demonic unrest that awakens in a narcissist when they lose access to your soul. It's not merely about losing a relationship, it's about losing their spiritual host. You weren't just someone they loved or even relied on, you were someone they consumed. You were their mirror, their emotional processor, their echo chamber, their canvas for projection. And now, you're gone. Not just in the physical sense, but emotionally, spiritually, completely. That level of loss is something the narcissist cannot comprehend without plunging into deeper darkness. And so they react, not because of love, but out of fear. Because your absence reminds them that they are not sovereign, that their charm has limits, and that it is God, not them, who holds the final word. The most powerful thing you can do now is stay hidden in God, not hidden in fear, but covered in His presence. Because the narcissist will look for entry points through nostalgia, guilt, shared connections, or manipulation. But if you remain under the shadow of the Almighty, their access will be denied. What once drew you in will now drive you away. What once silenced you will now expose them. What once felt magnetic will now feel meaningless, because God has done something unshakable within you. He has replaced their voice with His own. That's what obedience does. It doesn't merely shift your choices, it transforms your identity. You begin to remember who you are, not someone desperate for scraps of affection, not someone ruined beyond restoration, not someone tasked with healing a soul that was never submitted to God. You are someone chosen, guarded, reclaimed, and the deeper you walk in that truth, the more the narcissist unravels. Because for the first time, they recognize the game is over. Power was always a lie. It only worked because you unknowingly agreed with it. But now you've come into agreement with God. You've agreed with His verdict over your life. You've agreed with your value. You've agreed with your purpose. And that agreement echoes louder in the spiritual realm than any confrontation ever could. It declares to every unclean spirit working through them, this soul is no longer yours to touch. Do not mistake their intensity for influence. Do not confuse their desperation for importance. What you're witnessing is not revival, it is ruin. It is the tremor of a structure collapsing under divine weight. It is the final groans of a false authority, realizing it's been stripped. And all of it is happening because you said yes to the only voice that truly matters, the voice of the one who never manipulated you, never shamed you, never diminished you. The one who waited patiently, with compassion, for you to come back to His will and His embrace. The narcissist is losing their hold not because of an argument, but because of your alignment. And there is no recovery for them from that. Only silence, only separation, only the holy space where God now stands between you and every lie they ever tried to plant. From this moment forward, the narcissist will not be able to wound you again. There is a decisive shift in every battle, a moment where the power balance changes, not because the enemy has surrendered, but because you've been repositioned somewhere they can no longer reach. That moment for you has arrived. Not because they changed, not because they came to repentance, not because they finally recognized your value, but because God has shut the access to your soul. They may still exist, they may still attempt, but they no longer have the ability to penetrate, provoke, or poison what God Himself has sealed. It wasn't just physical space that ended the cycle, it was spiritual separation. For years they operated inside a place you unknowingly left unlocked. Through guilt, emotional attachment, uncertainty, or fear. That opening gave them permission to step into your peace and dismantle it. But the moment you obeyed God, truly obeyed, something eternal happened. He closed the opening you couldn't. He sealed off your soul from their influence. And in doing so, he made a declaration that roars louder than all their accusations. They will not harm you again. This doesn't mean they won't try. They might. But their efforts won't stick. Their words will feel hollow. Their presence will feel unfamiliar. What once unraveled you will now barely register, because you are no longer responding from a place of survival. You are living from a place of identity. And in that place, the narcissist has no rights. They didn't breathe life into you. They didn't redeem you, and now they cannot define or diminish you. Their rule is finished, not because they surrendered, but because heaven intervened. God stepped into the story, and that changed everything. Episode 7,